Hi, and welcome back to OTTB on Tap. I'm Neve.
And I'm Emily. Hey, Neve, what's on tap today?
Today, we're going to be talking with Chelsey O'Brien and learn about the beginning of her journey to the RRP Makeover 2024.
That's great. And for those just joining us, we have a new series where we will be chronicling the progress of 4 trainers as they prepare their off-track thoroughbreds for the retired Racehorse Makeover, which takes place October 9th through 12th, 2024 in Lexington, Kentucky.
And for those that don't know, the Retired Racehorse Project is a 501c3 charitable organization that created the Thoroughbred Makeover to showcase the trainability and talent of off-the-track thoroughbreds. The competition is intended to inspire good trainers to become involved in transitioning these horses to second careers, and the National Symposium serves to educate the people involved in the care, training, and sale of these horses to responsible owners. It's the only national gatherer of the organizations, trainers, and farms dedicated to serving these horses when they retire from racing. Emily was a trainer participant on 2 separate years, the first year when it was held at Pimlico, and then I think it was 2013 or 2014.
Yeah, so welcome, Chelsey. We are so excited to have you joining us today and taking us along the ride with you as you train your OTTB for the makeover. And for those just joining us, can you give us a little bit of an introduction about you, what your location is, and what your background is?
Okay, I'm Chelsey O'Brien, and I am currently in the Middleburg, Virginia area. I'm kind of all over the place, but within the general area of Middleburg. I grew up in New England and Massachusetts and started riding when I was 5. I was into hunters and jumpers and equitation and things like that, just on the local and small rated circuit in our area, and then probably rode my first off-track thoroughbred around the age 12 or 13. I got my personal restart at 16, and then I went to college, did IHSA, rode for the University of Massachusetts Dartmouth, and then I had a pretty rough head injury in college. I've had several of those, lots of concussions. And so I took some time off of riding. It was the worst a year of my life. And I decided the best way to get back into riding would be to go to Suffolk Downs and pick up a off-track thoroughbred 3 days off the races. And that was my start back into riding after they told me not to ride horses anymore. And so it's kind of been all downhill from there. In high school, I started working at a farm doing, exchange for some money off board and things. She did a lot of rehabs off the track and layups and things. So I learned a lot about like bandaging legs and tending to wounds and proper care and husbandry. And then the farm was also a Western pleasure farm. And so I learned to ride Western there. And then in college, I also picked up some Western riding, like started with playing around on barrels. And so that's how the thoroughbred that I have now, or the one after the head injury, Tomo Nights, she was supposed to be my hunter prospect, and she ended up being more apt for Western events. She has 0 aptitude for jumping, knuckles under, hates it, dirty stopper. We did a fun show one day, and they had barrels and just little fun classes, and we did that, and she really took to it. And ever since then, I've been really interested in restarting thoroughbreds for multiple disciplines. I am an ambassador for the Western Thoroughbred page for about the last 8 or 9 years, and they're interested in showcasing thoroughbreds in Western disciplines to show that they're definitely usable for all different careers, not just eventing or hunters, jumpers, English events, that they can be very successful in the barrel pen or on the ranch or out on trails, endurance and things like that. So
yeah, really cool. And so tell us a little bit about your horse that you've selected for the RRP this year. His jockey club name is Unbeknownst to Me. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's UBie. And he is an 8-year-old gelding by FedBiz out of Perfect Paula, who's a Song and a Prayer mare. He made 15 starts. He had 4 wins, 2 seconds, 2 thirds. He had a lot of different owners. I think in his 15 starts, he had, if I counted right, 5 or 6 different owners.
Wow.
Changes of hands. or trainers. And then in 15 starts, he ran at Gulfstream, Churchill, Laurel, Penn National, Pimlico, Delaware. So
oh my God.
Yeah, he's kind of been all over the place, but he had tie back surgery, and I think he just did not come back from that well. And so that's why he was retired. He is definitely showing a lot of aptitude for the barrels. He seems to really like it. Like somehow it's naturally ingrained in him.
That's really cool.
So I'm hoping to do barrels and Western dressage with him.
Oh, fun.
So you mentioned that he had the tie back. Do you know how far into his racing career that surgery happened, or?
I'm not entirely sure. I think it was towards the end. So he is owned by Pastured Place. Their goal is to send horses to the Retired Racehorse Project that might be overlooked as adoption horses. So UBie has a few things going against him. Between the tie back surgery, he is a cribber. He can be a little cranky, but it's okay. He's just a workhorse. He's the type of horse you could ride to war with. And I think that because he's smaller, he's like 15.2, 15.3, cribs, tie back surgery, all of those things, might not be suited for an English career. It's a little bit harder to move along these Western type thoroughbreds. So the goal is to prove to people that just because they have these little things, or the tie back surgery is a bigger thing, but people just have to be realistic about their goals and understand the limitations of those things, but also not discredit them because they have things that might not make them an upper level prospect or an Olympic horse in the future. It's just a matter of being realistic about your expectation and goals.
It's amazing how many people think they need an upper level prospect, an upper level horse, and they just overlook horses that would be perfect for them and would probably be less expensive to purchase and would be a better fit for them. Yeah.
Yeah. And he shows a lot of promise on the barrels, so even though my big focus is going to be conditioning and things like that, possibly getting a nebulizer and things like that, just to help him with his airways and just be really mindful of those things as far as his breathing goes.
Does he still make a noise? Does he roar when he?
No, not really. The big thing is that when he whinnies, you don't hear anything.
Right.
Every now and again, when we're warming up, it's a little dusty. He might cough just at the beginning, but it really doesn't seem to affect him that much, if at all.
That's good. That's great. I was going to ask about Pastured Place and how you got affiliated with them. Do you work for them, or do they send you horses to retrain? How does that work?
So I had a horse for the Retired Racehorse Project through them last year. And just by chance, I was on, I think, OTTB Market. And one of the girls who works at one of the farms just put up a really obscure post that was like, who would like to take a fully sponsored horse to the RRP? That was it. No pictures.
You're like,
nothing. And already so many people had responded. And I was like, well, this is weird and obscure, but I'm going to just see. It's no scam.
Right. I think I remember that post, and I was kind of like,
And so I wrote, and then they asked for videos of my riding, and I had described my experience with thoroughbreds and things. And I guess I also forgot to mention before that I have also been working in the thoroughbred industry for several years.
Okay.
So I have a lot of experience with the thoroughbreds. So I think that definitely helped my marketability or
credibility that you knew what you were doing.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I had gone through an interview process on the phone, sent videos. They said, okay, we're going to break it down to X amount of people, because you had to be within a certain radius so that, got rid of some of the other applicants. And then they narrowed it down, and then they made a decision. I think I was one of the only people who had applied. There was a lot of eventers who wanted to go. Now you can't send a bunch of eventers all to compete against each other, So last year we had a eventing rider who brought 2 horses, one for eventing and show jumping and one for dressage. And then we had a junior who did the hunters and the show jumpers. She did really well. They both did really well. And then I had a horse for barrels. Unfortunately, we were unable to compete due to a lameness when we got to Kentucky.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So that was how I actually found out about Pastured Place. And it was one of those situations where over the last few years, I hadn't been super active in the training aspect of things because I had had my daughter and I had had a really bad riding injury right after I had my daughter. And so I had gotten more into like the breeding and foaling aspect of things, doing some yearling prep and things like that. And so this was a really amazing opportunity for me. And they definitely took a risk because, well, I had a baby, but this is what I was doing before. And life has changed, but I don't really have a way to make a name for myself other than the guys that I rehome on the side off the track. And so it was really a dream come true. And it just was answering a very obscure ad on Facebook. So they were kind enough to send me UBie this year. I'm so grateful that what happened last year was very unfortunate. And the horse that I took, she was just awesome. And it was so disappointing. Obviously things happen, you know, they're in the race industry, so they understand that horses have their own timelines and things. And so, but she did get a great year of training and things like that under her belt. And now she is a very adoptable horse. And so they were gracious enough to let me have another try this year. And so I'm just super excited to represent them and to bring awareness to their organization and all the great things that they're doing.
I feel like so often race owners and breeders and et cetera kind of get a bad name in the race industry for maybe not caring about what happens to them afterwards. But I know of Pastured Place personally, and they really, really mean it when they say that that horse will have a home with them.
Yeah,
should anything happen down the road.
Because I've worked in the industry, I would say that most people do very much care about the animals that they're breeding. Yes. And there are a couple bad apples, give the whole bunch a bad name. And it's just not really the case. And I'm not saying that it doesn't happen. I'm not saying bad things don't happen because I've seen it. But a lot of people truly care about the animals that they're breeding and putting on the ground.
Yeah. I think the racehorse industry too is under such a microscope at all times, and that unfortunately the bad optics tend to be the bait that people start spreading around. And what you don't see are all these stories of the successes and the people that have gone out of their way to make sure that these horses are still treated like kings and queens for the rest of their lives and everything like that. I just wanted to ask you a couple of questions about your association now with a breeding farm, because I was just thinking about how we've been wanting to do a couple of episodes about people that work regular 9-to-5 jobs and the challenges that poses when you're training an off-the-track thoroughbred. But I think your story is really unique because I feel like when you're involved in the breeding industry, it's not 9-to-5 and it's sometimes 24/7. And so how have the last couple of months been for you with that? And how have you been fitting in time for UBie?
So it is a wild thing to explain to people who don't understand the industry, because breeding and foaling is another beast. And you really have to, you kind of just have to look at it as like, it's only for this time, you know, it's only a short period of time. And thankfully the farm that I was foaling for this year, she does it in a great way where she has cameras at night watching. She has 2 people watching the cameras all night. We also have full alert. So as soon as they break water, there is alarm going off and she's calling me and I'm running down the street to come and help foal. And there was some time in April, I think we had 16 babies in under 30 days. And
whoa.
And not much sleep.
Not much sleep. So there is a lot of caffeine. A lot of caffeine. There's a lot of caffeine that fuels this. You sleep when you can, you ride when you can. Thankfully, because we had a lot of these protocols in place, we did milk testing and all of that too. So we could kind of work our days around, okay, today is not a good day. You're really going to have to stay close to the farm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
cancel your dinner plans.
Yes. Yes. Just phone on loud at all times and be ready to roll.
And so how many babies did you guys have this year?
25.
Wow. Yeah. Our farm, we had 15, I think, this year. And yeah, it's pretty full on. And I think you're sort of downplaying that once they're on the ground, everything's easier, because now you've got these several 100-pound little kites that just want to. Man, I was visiting with the babies yesterday, and my favorite one, he's really, really big. His name is Eli. He's an Uncle Lino, and he'll let you sit down in the stall with him, and you can put his head in your lap, and he's so, so sweet. Oh. But he's almost getting to the point now where he's big enough that if he decides he's going to be naughty, he's actually going to really hurt me.
Yes.
Right.
And it just happens so quick. They are just so nimble.
Yeah. Yes. Our biggest one right now, he is really, really spirited. His name is Mahomes. They're all named after quarterbacks this year. And he is so naughty. And his dam is just like, get him away from me. He was nursing on her yesterday, and he's like the size of like a pony already. And I'm like,
oh my gosh, I know. They do. They grow so fast. And the boys they come out naughty. Most of them. And me and my boss always joked around, because as soon as the baby was born, we'd be checking to see filly or colt, because typically in our experience, the colts take a lot longer to get started. So we're like, what kind of night is it going to be? Is it a filly night or a colt night? Oh no, it's a colt.
Right. We're going to have to hold this one up for 2 hours while he figures out his
jumping
legs.
Up and like latching on without any help, and not in all circumstances, but in a lot of circumstances, the boys they take their sweet time.
So you really get to see the industry from end to end. That's very special, that you get to see them born and progress and then retrain them. I mean, maybe not the same ones.
Yeah, no, it's really exciting. The farm that I was working at previously, I had done they weren't ones that I had foaled, but we had prepped them. One that we had done the beginning of the prep on, we sold him for a lot of money, and he just made his first two starts, one at Gulfstream and then recently Churchill on Kentucky Derby Day. And he romped in both of them, and one by 13.5 lengths, one by 8 lengths or something like that. And I mean, it's obviously not every story of every horse that you put your hands on ends up like that, but it's just really cool to see something that you had a hand in do so well. Or on the flip side, they aren't good racehorses. And then maybe you get to take them and do something with them for a second career. And sometimes you look at them when they come out and you're like, oh, I can't wait until you're not a racehorse.
Yes, exactly.
And there's a really cool feature on the Jockey Club where you can put your name on a list. If you're interested in providing aftercare for the horse, you can sign up and put your name on there and your contact information, so that if the owners of the horse were looking to retire that horse.
Oh, no way. Is that a new feature?
I want to say maybe it is newer. I would say within the last couple years.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So all of my...
Maybe we'll try to find a link or a screenshot to that for anybody that's interested in checking it out. Because I know Emily and I over the years have done the virtual stable thing where we've tracked horses to see maybe they're going to stop racing soon.
Yeah.
And so...
Yeah. If you go into the Jockey Club site and where you would... I believe it's where you would make a tip number and all of that. There is the option to... but you can put your information down and they can contact you. You put your name, address, phone number.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So all of my babies that I've foaled, I always put my name on just in case.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's another thing to show that the people who are involved in this industry really do care about them and where they end up. I have everybody on my virtual stable too. So a really cool situation recently was the farm that we used to work at. We had a 2-year-old that we really liked, and he was really getting beat down. Looked like he was running a lot at Mountaineer, and then he kind of fell off.
Yeah.
And I was like, I wonder what happened to Norm. And then
Norm.
8 months later, I get an email from my virtual stable saying, oh, this horse is racing and it's under this trainer. Well, I know that trainer. She's in the she's an ambassador for the Western Thoroughbred as well, and she's a racehorse trainer. And so
cool.
It just ended up being a really cool, awesome full circle event. I'm like, oh, you have the biggest couch potato on the planet. And he was.
That's so funny. So he likes his new life better.
He shouldn't have been a racehorse. He should have been a show horse.
So getting back to UBie, tell us a little bit about what he was like to train once you started working with him after the deadline. And I don't really know that much about Western riding, except for that I'm terrible in a Western saddle. Though I did buy my horse a side pole that I'm going to try on him today. And my friend has a reining saddle that I rode in. It's so comfortable. It's the only saddle I've ever ridden in like that. That's actually really comfortable. It feels like a couch. So yeah, just tell us a little bit about that process and how you introduce them to things like the barrel pattern and things like that.
So when I first started riding UBie, he's simple in the fact that like you can just get on and go. He's just a trooper. He's a war horse. He doesn't care about anything. Now, the problem, I kind of analyzed them because a program called Balanced Movement Method. And so it kind of focuses on biomechanics, proper biomechanics, in-hand work and things like that. And so the first time that I rode him, very forehandy, not a lot of bending, very stiff to the right. I really needed him to bend through the rib cage and step underneath himself. And it's all just basic things that you would want in an English horse too. You don't want them running around on their forehand, and you want them to engage their core and lift their back. I do a lot of long and low work and things like that. So I don't even like to start them on the pattern until they can walk, trot, canter properly without pulling me around on the front end, because with the barrels, they really have to have their hind end engaged, or else you're not going to make a smooth, fast turn.
That's a nice way of saying they're not going to fall over.
Yes. Yeah. Because if you're going fast and you're just running on your front end, your feet are going to slip out from underneath you. So it's just teaching them that 4-wheel drive, but they have to have really strong foundation on the flat. So it's very basic. I work a lot of circles. I work a lot of straightness, and everything I don't work them really hard. I get to the point and then I end. I don't really have a plan for the day. I just kind of see where we're at and what needs to be worked on. And I pick one goal after analyzing what's going on for the day. We work on that. I get the right answer, and then we call it quits, because I don't like to drill them. I think it gives them time to process. But yeah, so some of them can be a little silly when you first put a Western saddle on. He does not care. But so I just kind of start them all the same way, doing just a lot of groundwork, a lot of in-hand, teaching them to just engage better, be engaged with me, be present. It's a lot of like woo-woo. Sit.
We're both like kind of very into this. We just both actually signed up for the TRT method.
Cool.
And,
Cool.
Yeah. I just love groundwork. We've both always just been big into it. And I've hired professionals over the years to help me with horses that I was having trouble with. And there's also a really famous Amish cowboy out in our area. His name's Sam Smucker. He's an incredible genius with horses. And Emily had a horse in training with him at one point, and we would go there and watch. And I mean, he could move a horse's hind foot with his energy. It wasn't without him building that foundation, but he'd be like, I want that foot to go there. And then he would show us all of the fundamentals.
Not touching them. Like he wouldn't even be near them.
He would just walk up to them, or he'd be near them and he'd be like, now I want them to go there or go there. And it was amazing. And you're like, I want to learn how to connect to a horse like that. But also the foundation of every person I've ever witnessed doing any sort of groundwork methodology is disengaging the hind end. And I don't think that some people appreciate how much unlocking the hind end opens up everything else. And it's like your access point to the rib cage, to the shoulder, to the head and neck. And I think if you start in the front, you're always going to be fighting the hind end.
And with the racehorses, I think it's really important to do things like that, because not saying in all cases, but I just think that many of them get a little front endy, pulling themselves along instead of engaging behind to run forward. As I'm cantering with my hands.
I was just thinking also, barrel racing must be a really interesting discipline for a racehorse, because you're asking it to do what it did before, which is gallop quickly and taking big strides. And then in an instant, you're saying, now I need you to push that accordion together and get around this turn and don't lose any speed while you're doing it, and open that accordion back up again and then go across the pattern. And that, I think, from a training standpoint, sounds incredibly difficult.
Yeah. So part of what I do is we start walking the pattern. And a lot of the theories are that when you start going fast, they're going to want to get closer. So everything you do is big and wide, and doing it correct at the walk. And then if they're doing it correct at the walk, go ahead and try and trot it. And you're just really focusing on specific points around the barrels that you want to hit, and hitting the apex, then coming around. And in theory, you want them to plant a leg and spin. I call it dressage in fast motion. They really have to be listening to your seat. Obviously, there's a lot of different ways to do it, and some people can kick and pull and do things like that. But when you're doing it properly, they are so in tune with you, and what you're doing at home is creating the muscle memory, because you're not going to fix anything at a show.
Right.
You are just pretty much testing all your holes at the horse shows. And the biggest thing with these horses is you really have to not make it stressful for them, because it is a very anticipatory thing, because you're doing the same exact thing every time. So you want to make it so that they're listening to you and not thinking, oh, I know this. And at least in the greener stages of it, my older horse, Tomo, who I've had for 10 or 11 years now, she's like, okay, I know this. You're the one in the way. Get out of with the greener horses. They really need to be in tune with you once they become seasoned and going around. And that takes a long time. You know, it's a very short period of time to get a horse on the barrel pattern to get to the RP. Every horse comes along at a different rate. Some horses can be out competing very quickly. But if you're doing it the right way, you have to put that strong foundation on them. And if they don't progress quickly enough through that, or not enough, just at their time, then it just can take a while. And so you'll see horses at all different levels at the RRP, where some horses have just progressed really quickly, or some might struggle with it because the atmosphere. Barrel racing is just a tough sport. You have to be very calm, but also fiery at the same time.
And how does that tie in? You said you were also thinking about competing in Western dressage. Is there any difference between Western dressage and English dressage? And B, does it help you, do you think, that you're concentrating on both, or does it make it harder?
No, I definitely think focusing on the Western dressage as well, because there's two parts to the barrel racing. There is a horsemanship pattern, which is like a dressage pattern in theory, and you make two runs. So I think that just ties in well. It's a dressage test or a horsemanship pattern. And so I think doing both will definitely help. I think I'm not super educated in the Western dressage. This is a new endeavor for me as well. So I think that he is improving his movement every day. and getting stronger and fitter and more supple and things like that. And I just think that it would be great to showcase other things that he could do, because maybe barrel racing isn't what everybody wants to do with a Western horse. And being well-rounded, I mean, who's to say that we couldn't just throw English dressage saddle on him and go do dressage the next day? So I want to create a really versatile horse so that he can be adoptable. Yeah. I'm not training him for me. I'm training him to be someone else's hopeful best friend forever. And if I can give him more avenues and more exposure in different things, then I think that's the best way to set him up for success in his future.
Absolutely. I mean, I think Neve and I feel very similarly in that any horse that has kind of like more diverse skills gives them potentially more value, and that hopefully once they leave your hands, they will always have value to somebody. Yes. And it might not be doing what you initially intended, but if they're well-rounded enough, it always serves them well in the future. So that's awesome. No, it's all good.
Do you have any funny stories or outtakes about training UBie that you'd like to share?
Honestly, he's all business. However, one day he broke, and this is probably the only outtake of him, but it's possibly the reason why I thought we would succeed in Western dressage was because I had him tied and he broke the tie and off he ran down the fence line with my horses, and wow, the trot on that horse.
Yeah, there really isn't anything fancier than a horse that just let himself run around.
Yes.
Showing off to the other horses.
Yes. Thankfully, he's very, very, very food driven. He loves food. So it was an easy catch. But everything else, and it was just one of those situations where he got the rope over his ear and then whoop, and I had him tied to a hay string, so it broke easily, and off he went. But yeah, besides that, he's just a total dude. He does his job and he's all business, and he's like, okay, and that's it. I'm like, all right, buddy.
So do you have plans to get him to some little shows or anything over the next couple of months?
Yeah, so there are barrel races every other week up here in Northern Virginia. And so I'm hoping to get him to some of those. There's some open arena practices for the barrels and things. I'm looking into some clinics as far as like getting him exposed to some cattle, because in the event that we decided, let's try ranch horse instead of Western dress, I just think it's good to expose him to a lot of different things. I'm also the woo-woo weirdo that's like, the horse has to decide what he wants to do.
I like that approach.
And so I don't really push them into any certain direction unless they show me that's the direction that they want to go into. And so I think the barrels is definitely his thing. I think the dressage could be anybody's thing, but what if he wanted to be an amazing cow horse? Then, why not try it? And again, it's only going to give him more experience to be a more marketable, adoptable horse for somebody who is going to think this horse is super cool and put to rest all the stereotypes that thoroughbreds aren't equal to quarter horses and all of those nonsensical things that people say.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think cow exposure may serve him well in other areas of his life too, around us and probably around you. If you go on a paper chase or even out for a hack, you might run into a field of cows. Yes. And it's not super fun when you're on a horse that doesn't know what they are.
Yeah, I think we were on a paper chase one time and we actually had to go through a field with belted Galloways. And the cows were just sort of off to the side, and they opened the gates on either side, and we're just like, yeah, you just have to go across the field. And we're like, well, guess we'll find out.
Here we go.
Here we go. I think that's been our approach to almost everything in this industry as well. Here we go. Guess we'll find out.
Yeah, I don't think there's any other way.
But it's been really interesting talking to all of our RRP participants with the podcast because, well, for one, I'm just really impressed by the level of professionalism with all of you guys that we've been interviewing, and also your approach with the one thing that you guys all seem to have in common, even though you're doing different disciplines and come from different backgrounds, is that you're letting the horse speak to what it wants to do.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not trying to put a square peg into a round hole. And I think that thoroughbreds can be tricky because you can see one and think, wow, this horse says eventer all day long. And you get it home and it might just not be well suited for eventing. And that's a bit of a gamble, right? When you get these horses, because you are getting this blank slate, but oftentimes they do have an aptitude for one thing or the other. And every time we got a horse in our program, it would be kind of like, well, we'll just see what it likes to do and kind of point it in that direction. But with horses, there's just no guarantees that they're going to love their job. And also, I think environment plays a big factor as well. So I think that sometimes the environment that horses are in will either help them enjoy a particular discipline more or less.
Yeah, it's just fun to see the way different horses handle different things. And like you said, it's like you look at something and say, wow, that's like my horse Tomo. Oh, this is going to be a hunter. She is my hunter prospect. And did I try so hard? Because it was what I wanted. But that was selfish. And at the end of the day, it actually isn't what I want. I don't particularly want.
You found your way into something totally different.
I think it's amazing to do things that are not judged just on someone's opinion. So that's why barrel racing has been really, really fun and interesting change of pace for me. You know, like the horses, I also want to be super well-rounded, and you can take different things from all different disciplines, and you learn something from the groundwork that can go into your riding work. You can learn something from Western pleasure, using your seat better with no hand to ride these guys better. And I just think it's really important to give them a chance to try different things. And like you said, it's been really interesting listening to everybody else's experiences. And it's just cool to see the way that horsemanship is changing and people really listening to their horses. Because I think if we had this conversation 10 years ago, it would be very different.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting for Emily and I too, to be so removed from, I mean, what has it been, like 7 years, Emily? 6-7 years that we're removed from the resale business. And I think your perspective just really shifts quite a lot, but you almost like need that base of knowledge to sort of marinate and evolve a little bit over time. And I think you're right. I think that this conversation would be probably much different 10 or 15 years ago. And actually Jessica Redmond's sort of spoken to the same point of view as well. And again, I think that the optics of the racing industry are really starting to change. I think the RRP and all of the trainers are a big part of that. And I think as time goes on, there's going to be less of a gap between horses that are done with racing and homes for them post-racing. I think that gap is starting to be bridged a lot sooner and with a lot more connections for trainers and aftercare organizations. So.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so exciting.
Well, I think that pretty much wraps us up for today.
Chelsey, where can listeners find you and follow along on your journey?
Oh, so on Facebook, I'm very active posting. So you can find me on my regular Facebook page, and then Chelsey O'Brien, and then also my Instagram handle for specifically UBie is RRP unbeknownst letter to me. You can also follow Pasture Place on Instagram and on Facebook. I don't remember if I mentioned it, but I am not the only rider for Pasture Place this year. We have 6 riders and 5 horses going.
Cool. Wow.
So that's really exciting. And so you can follow along with the other journeys by following Pasture Place on Instagram, Facebook. There's also, you could go to pastureplace.org if anybody's interested in their other adoptable horses. If other RRP trainers are looking for horses, there are still RRP eligible horses available there. And also on that page, if anybody's looking to donate or sponsor or anything like that, you can find that also on pastureplace.org. Yeah.
Super. In addition to following Chelsey on social media, check out OTTB on Tap OTTB.com for a centralized page with more pictures and videos to follow along on her journey to the RRP makeover. You can find OTTB on Tap on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Feel free to reach out to us with interview candidates and topic suggestions on our website, OTTBontap.com. Sign up for our newsletter to be the first to find out about upcoming episodes, bonus content, and much more. We love hearing from you.